Yes, quite, especially Tara and, the Elgar Marks and things like that. I'm not going to opine on political things. I think that, they've become. I think the British Museum, bizarrely, has been an incredible safe house for some items all over the world. We think of the destruction of maybe like the Taliban in Afghanistan and things like that, and turbulent stuff. And regrettably, art is a tradable thing in the underworld. So lots of fabulous artworks are probably with very wealthy drug barons in South America. These things disappear. And sometimes I think, whether it's in New York, whether it's in Colombo, whether it's in London, I think the great thing for important works of art is public access. I think the great crime is when they're put in a storeroom somewhere or in private ownership. And I think that Neil McGregor series he did for radio about History of the World in 100 Objects was the true successor to the great Kenneth Clark who wrote Civilization.
Any more questions? My goodness, James, you stunned them into silence.
There, gentlemen.
One of the things about antiques is that you are not allowed to take them out of Sri Lanka if they're older than 100 years.
Right.
And therefore, as an auctioneer of antiques, do you feel that the things that you find of Sri Lanka could have to come back, could be brought back here? One of the things I find is that if I, as a collector, go and buy an antique abroad and bring it back here, I cannot take it away, but they will charge me a huge duty and a tax.
Yeah.
And I have this opinion that if you bring back something that you're not allowed to take out, you should be paying tax. I'm not sure what the rules in England are.
The rules changed. There was a lovely, very interesting antique dealer who was one of the great antique dealers in history, who sold priceless works of art to all the new American railroad multimillionaires, the Vanderbilts, various, the Rothschilds and everything. He was a man called Lord Duveen. And Lord Duveen had this fabulous sort of double act, and he was called Berenson. And Berenson was an academic, and Lord Duveen would buy stuff because he realized that his naughty mantra was, Europe has a lot of art, America has a lot of money. And you go to America and it is absolutely bizarre. You can go round somebody's swimming pool in Florida and there's a Roman cistern by their swimming pool. And the amount of stuff that came principally from Italy, and Berenson, probably as an assuaging act, left his Villa Tatti, outside Florence as to an American university for a European study centre. So he was obviously communing with St. Peter at the time and thought, how do I get through the gates of heaven? Guilt. So there is movement of art, but it just qualifies exactly what Ashok thought. My two bracelets from Kandyan princes were obviously reproduction, weren't they?
I'm sure of it. Any more questions?
Oh,
there are a couple here in the front.
So, James, thank you very much. If I could ask you, what is your favourite item you have ever discovered on the Antiques road trip?
It's always tempting to say what my greatest profit was. my always guide to entering an antique shop is to find out, you can quickly tell what the antique dealer is good at. If 70 or 80% of the antique shop is filled with furniture, you probably know he's a specialist in furniture. If it's principally silver, you know exactly that, it's probably silver. So when I enter an antique shop, I always look for something that's slightly odd within the antique shop. And that's where you get the bargains. And I was up in Norfolk, I was near, where was I near? I was near King's Lynn. And I went to this antique shop full of lovely Edwardian and older furniture, very beautifully inlaid and painted. And I could see he loved Sheraton design furniture. And by his counter where his till was, he had a display cabinet. And in the display cabinet was a lovely vase made by Royal Worcester. And I picked it up and I said, oh, this is a lovely vase. And I said, how much is it? And he said, well, that's £80, but that includes the other one. And, you know, at the back of the shop, somebody had moved it. And so I got a pair of Royal Worcester, beautifully painted by a known artist, pair of Worcester vases, and they went on to make £450. And that was one of my great profits.
Gosh. There's another question here.
Hello, thanks for talking to us today. I've really enjoyed it. And as I admitted earlier, I am a huge fan of Antiques Roadshow and Bargain Hunt, etc.
Yeah.
I just wondered, firstly, about the stories of the things that you have valued over the years. Do you draw a connection between the stories that things have told to you and the stories that you now are telling? And I also was curious, I've not read the book yet, is the antique dealer actually Mr. Ashok Ferry, or has he featured in some way?
Hold on, no, you'll have to wait for Ashok, because of course Ashok Ferry appears in a different guise. He's older in my second book, which is going to be The Crocodile Stone, which is about a very large sapphire that's found in, has lots of stars, and the person who the young man takes it to, an eminent antique dealer in Kandy, is always referred to in the book as Mr. Ashok.
There you are, remember that, Mr. Ashok. None of this Ashok Ferry nonsense for you lot. Okay, maybe one more question if we have time. Anyone else? Well,
Sorry, I sort of went on about items, and I mentioned that at the beginning. The humbler the object, the more precious it is. I know a friend who is a professor at Chelsea School of Art, and her seminal work is on working aprons, because utility clothing and things that you use, like cups, if they weren't precious, they rarely survive the rigors of use or ownership or whatever. So I'm always really fascinated in quite humble objects, and humble objects that survive centuries, always a good design and are always made of good materials.
thank you for that piece of advice. We'll all go home and check out that our grandma left behind. Well, thank you very much for being with us. Thank you.